Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about hybrid cloud, some of the challenges involved and ways to address those challenges. We'll also talk about issues around migrating to the cloud. To discuss that, I'm joined by Dan Chalk, Global Leader for Transformation Services, Cloud Applications and Infrastructure at Unisys. Dan, very good to see you and happy Friday to you.
Good to see you, James, too. Thanks for the invite and sorry for the big, long, crazy title.
I was going to say, I personally would be slightly intimidated by that title because transformation services, cloud applications, and infrastructure, I could study a long time and never know enough about all those things. And I follow all those things day in and day out, and they still mystify me.
I'm with you. It's a dynamic world. What can I tell you?
It's a lot to keep up with, I'm telling you. And just a short, trip down this rabbit trail. Have you noticed technology has gotten, as far as I'm concerned, more complicated than it was several years back? It feels like it's taken sort of a hockey stick up and to the right turn towards complexity these days.
Yeah, for sure, James. I think, some of us who are old enough to remember multiple generations of this problem, right? We've all heard the "it's never been busier before" thing. Trust me, it can get worse, but it's never been busier than now.
I think you're right. So hybrid cloud, I think other interesting thing about hybrid cloud is I think of hybrid cloud as almost the original way for companies to get really into the cloud. A lot of companies obviously had data centers. So if we go back to 2010, 2012, and cloud is really taking off, and hybrid cloud is the way to get on board. We had a data center, we had a cloud, and we could bridge the two and call it a hybrid cloud, and we were off and running. What about this year though? What trends are driving hybrid cloud, and particularly what about migration this year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's a lot of good historical parallels we don't have to go back through, but I think the nut of it is the pandemic certainly has caused everybody to accelerate the journey, right? This multi-cloud thing really just, to simplify that, it's about multiple public clouds being added into an already complicated hybrid cloud environment. It sort of just multiplies the connection points, the challenges, the integration points. Something simple in theory as security, right? Nothing simple about it today. But now if you have to attack 5 or 6 or 7 platforms plus SaaS, it just gets far more complicated than it ever has been. I think for me the trends are interestingly though in a little bit of a different place. And that is, how do clients actually enter that cloud journey? Now, we can all say, right, clients have been in private cloud forever, right? And many people have found a way to get into public cloud. But I think it bodes well to kind of talk about how do they enter and what pitfalls do they hit typically, just for a minute.
Sure.
We see what we call 3 on-ramps just in the last 12 months that have persistently kind of been true in terms of this on-ramp. The first one, just simple migration, right? Call it lift and shift, creating a virtual data center instead of a physical data center.
Right.
All kind of interesting, but there's a couple of pitfalls that hit that one. One is a lot of times clients predetermine a platform. They've not even really analyzed their application suite, what fits best where, what are the kind of their enterprise priorities, right? They just kind of decide, I'm going to go with provider X because they're big or they happen to be able to find resources or whatever. And then they do things like pick a database platform in one area. They have to convert it to something that works best for the other. And now they've complicated the journey, right? In an unnecessary way.
Right.
So I tell folks, lift and shift to take care of technical debt or avoid the refreshing of physical infrastructure, all good reasons, but don't expect big business benefits, right? The digital transformation benefits that really come out of it. It's a stepping stone, right? Don't consider that a big benefit. So that's a big one on the first side. I think on the really modernization side of things, right? App modernizations where people like to focus more, that's a good thing.
You're talking about cloud native now when you say modernization, or not necessarily?
It's definitely starts as cloud native. And in fact, that's one of the pitfalls that I see, right? Clients will say, I'm going to go with platform X, whatever it is. They gather a bunch of coders who, like all good programmers, focus on the specialization of that platform. The problem is if things don't fit right, or you have multi-cloud and hybrid, right? You got to still address the issues across platform, integration, security, disaster recovery. All those things have to happen. I think funny enough too, when they focus on cloud native, those are the greatest, most innovative, new, younger generation of talent. Wonderful. We need them at the middle of everything.
Right.
We don't necessarily understand all the legacy things that have to come over, right, and be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So cloud native is interesting, but what I tell folks is try to find a way towards containers, microservices, right? Things that create that extraction layer so that the platform itself, you can take advantage, but you're not locked into it, right? Another key element. I think the big item too that gets missed is what's motivating you? What's the actual metric for success, right? If your success metrics is around how many servers did I migrate, I'm not sure your business leaders are gonna, kind of sign on and feel like that was high value. We tell folks shift to things like 100% uptime. Everybody can get into 100% delivery on time, right? When you're talking about shipping and transformation and air cargo, right? One of Unisys specialties, actually. 100% on-time delivery is easy to get behind, but 3 nines of uptime, business leaders aren't going to see that as benefit, right?
Because they already expect it, you mean? Why would that not be a benefit?
It's absolutely an expectation. At the end of the day, if you're in a hospital or you're flying a plane, certainly you want access to the system. But the thing that improves your service and makes it differentiated is not the system access. It's what you do with the system, right? Digital transformation is about optimizing that experience of your client, of your business leaders, making things easier, right? Employing AI. Yes, you can employ AI to give you better availability of systems, but in and of itself, that's not the thing that's going to move the needle for your business.
Well, you talked about a business needs to know what it's doing or what its motivation is. It seems like one of the primary motivations for the migration to the cloud is to leave our old data center behind. As much as it served us, we've got to hire IT staff to run it. It needs to be cooled, and et cetera. We'd rather move into the cloud because it's scalable, it's flexible, plus there's all these other tools we can get there. Yeah. We're not even sure beyond that, but we know it's just an all-around better world, although some people disagree on that. I mean, is that not the primary motivation for folks to migrate to the cloud?
It is the motivation, and what I worry about, though, and it's a good one, right? Sometimes it's easier to change in the place you're going to than to sort of do it along the way. And I get that. We support that. Clients, I would say 80% of our clients, that's their way they take the journey. We help them with that, right? Let's not resist it. But the point is, don't expect the big business impact simply through elasticity and being able to scale up a server more quickly, right? At the end of the day, getting a technical component to run in minutes instead of hours or weeks doesn't actually reinvent your business. It might enable reinvention in a quicker pace, but it doesn't in and of itself create the effect you need.
Interesting, yeah. All right, well, let's you talked about Unisys, you mentioned it. Let's drill down to that. I mean, how does Unisys support hybrid cloud migration? I mean, why would a company choose Unisys?
Yeah, really great question. I think it kind of starts with a little bit of our heritage. We're a 148-year-old company. Some people may not see that as an advantage, but the reality is that since the beginning of really IT as a true technology that business used back in, let's say, the 60s, we were at the very forefront even then of leveraging technology with things like National Weather Service. Today, it's more about air cargo, global financial houses, right, use our systems. Many of our applications, people think of Unisys more as an infrastructure provider a lot of times, but many of our application environments, where actually the largest businesses are solving problems for global banks and transactions that are Twitter scale every single day.
Can I interrupt? I'm not totally sure when you talk about. Explain to me the idea of application services. I know generally what the idea means, but what is that exactly?
Yeah, as an example, about 10% of global air cargo works on Unisys systems. We've written
Really, on
systems.
Unisys machines in Unisys data centers somewhere?
Software, no, software, pure
Software, okay.
software systems. So
Gotcha.
logistics management, all the things it takes to really manage that cargo from where it starts to where it goes,
Gotcha.
all the logistics, tracking, et cetera, et cetera.
All right.
Many other examples of that in banking were the same thing, right? It's not our hardware, it's not our, Unisys platforms in terms of the old hardware we had. It's really about the systems themselves. Another example is law enforcement. 6 states and most of their local police forces actually use our systems in their actual cars.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just the software, but how we apply AI to do things like give those officers warnings of, hey, you might want to be careful with this particular license plate, as an example, right? Something could be going on here. So we're very deep into use cases that are application business specific.
Okay.
We have been for many, many decades. That's a big advantage, right? When you're trying to re-engineer, if you've gone through that re-engineering, like at the top of the call, we started with our history as gray hairs, if you will, right? We've been through this journey a lot of times. You kind of know how to navigate it again. It's just a different mousetrap, if you will.
So the Unisys software could be seated in any number of locations. It could be on AWS, it could be Azure, Google Cloud. It's distributed among many different platforms. Am I correct on that?
And usually our solutions are, in fact, multi-cloud.
Yeah.
Right. Because we walk into a client, they've got pretty much everything. We've got to support our platform, their platform, ServiceNow, SAP, et cetera. It's all got to interact in a very cohesive way. And we've got many, many decades of doing that is a big advantage, right? I think the second thing I didn't mention actually was we do that with ultra secure clients in mind, military, again, police, banks, right? When you live in that reality of constant attacks by, any number of attackers, if you will,
right.
That's a very unique skill set in the ultra secure world, right? So now take that to regular business, and you still have to apply, deep security principles. That's embedded in our culture, and it is kind of one of the things that most providers certainly recognize.
What about Unisys and the hybrid cloud service? How does that work out?
In hybrid cloud, we have a heritage of our own data centers, as you imagined, or you mentioned earlier.
Right.
I think the key to it, though, is we've actually shed most of that. We certainly still have a few around the world because many of our clients need something that supports that. Most of our business, though, is now in either client data centers to get them to public cloud, or kind of this bridging mechanism, right? Some industries are not quite ready for public. They're worried about it.
Right.
So we might
financial.
use something, absolutely. We might use something like Outposts, right? As a stepping stone.
What is Outpost? I'm not familiar with that.
Outpost is the AWS version of private cloud that uses the same technology, right? So now you can refactor and re-architect their applications, but still have it in a private instance until you get to a place where you can actually move to fully public.
Okay.
Obviously, we do a lot of business too with specialized public clouds, right? GovCloud, Europe has its version of that. We're in all those pretty persistently.
Well, I'd like to get your sense of where hybrid cloud is going, or where technology is going. I think companies are always looking for that because it takes a while to get ready for that future that's on the way. I mean, what do you think about the future of hybrid cloud or cloud in general? What milestones do you see in the years ahead?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about some of the pitfalls of the process itself. I think what we've seen in the last, call it 6 to 9 months, is people are realizing those pitfalls now. They're realizing that digital transformation is not just about moving workloads. It's really about optimizing workflows that are more business oriented. So they've made that switch. They might need help accelerating a bit, but I think there's 2 key trends that really haven't yet delivered on that promise that are now starting to come into focus. We started kicking around AI.
Right.
AI and machine learning is a big one. A lot of folks have applied that to some of the the basic tenets of processing to make sure uptime is better.
Mhm.
If you marry performance statistics and the things that AI can do with that to business transactions so that you recognize the correlation between business volume and processing power,
Mhm.
now you can start to use things like business forecasts and let AI look at that and say, how is that going to change your profile, right? It can optimize elasticity, maybe even point you towards different platforms at different times. So that's a big one. That's coming into focus now. It's really producing a lot of really good results in application areas, again, banking, law enforcement, air cargo, even public transportation systems, right? In Australia, when a cyclone kicks up and you're sitting in Victoria, as an example, as one of the provinces, right? Big, huge public transportation grid. You've got to understand what that storm might actually do to your actual citizenry, right? To get them to the right places at the right times.
Sure.
So really powerful there.
Huh.
I think the last success is again measured in this business value delivered item, shifting people to think about 100% on-time delivery instead of 3 nines of uptime. You need both, but when you get people behind an actual business deliverable, it helps people not worry about the nuts and bolts of some of the technology.
What drives that? What enables that 100% prospect?
What I think drives the metric shift is really keeping clients and technologists focused on a simple question of why, right? Is your business leader going to be worried about 3 nines of uptime? Of course they want system access, but what makes people in a hospital happier is nurses and clinicians treating more patients, right? Surgery centers operating more reliably because all the systems are not just functioning, but they're efficient to use, they're easy to use. When there's a downtime, there's an easy shift to a new device, right? These kinds of things are really what make business work faster and easier. That's what it's easy to get clients shifted on if you just keep it out front, right? Keep the conversation going that way.
You know, one interesting issue might be a sidetrack, but I'd love to get your sense of it. You've talked about AI, and of course, we've been talking about cloud. Do you have a sense of how those two technologies are going to work off each other or play off each other in the years ahead? Obviously, they're almost intertwined in some ways, but what's your take on how those two are going to drive each other or not drive each other?
Yeah, I think they will. I think as right now we're in a stage where migration or transformation to new platforms is kind of the agenda. And as we go there and as we arrive there, it'll transform more into how do we optimize those platforms to really react to business realities more quickly, right? Think about the pandemic and some of our other global issues now. The global supply chain, right? A challenge for everyone. I've talked to many different companies that say they've had to triple their procurement disciplines simply to address sourcing by 4 or 5 or 6 vendors instead of one, just for sheer availability. So if you think about transaction volume and purchasing systems 2, 3, 4 years ago, that's 5 or 6 times complex now.
Wow.
Understanding how those kinds of business changes impact your IT estate, your applications, your integration points, your security protocols, that's where AI and machine learning can help, right? As it learns the patterns of normal and you apply the changes of the future, now you can start to see where you're going to have issues and have to deal with things differently.
Dan, I think you said it. A lot of interesting stuff. I very much appreciate you sharing your insight today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate the time, James. Good to talk to you and hope we do it again soon.